Well, here we are, and I have this little guy right here, which has really impressed me since I've picked it up. Really wasn't thinking that much of it. There's only one or two little nitpicks, but hey, let's go ahead and get into it. This is the QSP Mamba V2, and looks like I got some fingerprints on it. I was just playing around with it for a couple of minutes here before started this out, and yes, this guy is a little bit larger, but right up in the same kind of production line as we got the Parrot and the Penguin here. At least the initial versions of the Penguin. They've done literally 36 different versions of this at this point. But, yes, you can see it is larger. So that is nice. It is right around the same kind of price. I think I paid $33 for this guy. Same steel we got here, D2. So that works out pretty well. They're both liner locks. However, this does not have a thumb stud like those guys, but it also has bearings in the pivot, whereas the initial versions of these have washers, even though they have really good action to go along with those washers. But yes, the detent on this, pretty darn fantastic. You can push button it pretty easily. I almost always end up using a light switch, kind of, that whole flicky sort of thing. And that works out great. We have lock bar access here on these little polished liners. And it doesn't seem like it's going to cause me any sorts of trouble, like I've said in the past. If you are really, really gripping down on this initial version of the Penguin, yeah, you can accidentally unlock that, and that's just because squeezing it does easily move that over to the side. This, of course, doesn't have that, nor does the Parrot, by the way. I just figured I would share that with you guys. Now, this has their blue micarta on there, and that blue micarta is basically the same kind of stuff that you'll find on the QSP Hawk here. This is a little bit more upscale, but not an incredibly vast amounts blade. This one has a 14C28N instead of the D2 here, but it is probably also about twice as expensive. But yes, we have basically the same kind of micarta going on here. This has much more flex and flex-like texture to it, so a little bit grippier, so a little less polish going on there. My absolute favorite would be if they did this in the denim micarta that they did on the Penguins here. But hey, that's just a personal preference, and it doesn't really change too much. The only other thing that I really have as a nitpick on this, and that's just my own personal thing, is I don't generally like these shadowboxed liners, if you will, or reverse shadow box, whatever the heck you want to call that. Basically where the steel liners poke out everywhere instead of being flush with the scales. This kind of gets around that a bit. You can see the jimping up there. So your thumb is a little bit more designed to actually engage with the top of the blade there rather than back on the handle where that would cause a little bit more discomfort. But if you are definitely looking for a blade like this sort of affair, something like that, and yep, this guy just isn't quite large enough for you, or you just need something a little bit larger and maybe a little, I guess I'll call it a clip point, but yeah, it's very, very gradual, or yeah, whatever you want to call it. I could easily call that a drop point as well. But yeah, a pretty aggressive tip. It does get nice and thin behind there, so it's decent for detail kind of work and stuff like that, but not really crazy robust for doing all the absolute stabbing into very tough materials. That's okay. Because this is pretty much designed to be a little EDC knife, and it works really great for that. Something I'd also like to point out is we do have reversible pocket clip on here, as we do on both of these guys technically here. And it is basically channeled on both sides, so it is countersunk into the micarta there with multiple lash points. As you can see, we do have technically button screws on here, but they're sunk in pretty darn far. This pocket clip actually ends up working out quite well. It's fairly similar. Yeah, fairly similar here to the Penguin. Not quite identical, but I would probably have to break out the calipers to really prove my point. But the Penguin's is just a slightly bit wider. But yes, we can see on the inside here we have some skeletonized pockets out of the steel to make it a little bit lighter. Yeah, the action, like I said, on this thing is quite nice with the bearings and the pivot there. Works out pretty darn good. The blade stock we got on this is 3.15 millimeters, so a little slicier than some other brands tend to start out with a blade stock. We got 3.45 ounces here, or 98 grams, just under 100 grams. That works out pretty darn cool. And we got 3.45 inches worth of blade length here, and because it's basically the blade starts right where that little hump is, that's basically where I measured it. So you have that much useful cutting length in the blade on that. You do have a bit of a sharpening choil there, and yeah, it does okay. But you can see we have a very gradual plunge grind there, which, you know, QSP is done for a lot of things, and it does look fairly elegant, but it does kind of come back to bite you once you want to try to sharpen that a couple of times. And you get those little smile marks there that are only going to get worse with time, not better. Let's see, as far as the metric things go for the blade length, it's basically 87.7 millimeters, so, you know, don't think I'm leaving you all out just by using the imperial measurements here. Let's see, and the thickness on here is 0.51 millimeters, or 12.8, or sorry, 0.51 inches, so just over half an inch, or 12.8 millimeters for it. So very, very, very similar to the Spyderco PM2. Speaking of which, I can go ahead and do a little bit of blade comparisons here. Let's see if I can't gather up all of my stuff. My desk is kind of a mess at the moment. Yeah, there's the Spyderco PM2. Well, the Enduro is going to be quite a bit larger. I do plan on trying to get a native soon. I had one for a long, long time. It's actually what gave me this scar right here many, many years ago. It was definitely my own dumb mistake on something that I ended up doing at work. But that's for another day. Okay, so there's that. How about if we go on to some Benchmads here? Here's a bug out. And you can see it's a little bit smaller. And here's hey, what the 940 is supposed to look like. Since, yeah, this has now made it back from the factory with a new blade in there. And, yeah, I did end up putting my own edge on there because this thing actually came not very sharp. You know, it was... Obviously, it's a replacement blade and stuff like that, but it got to me, and it scored about 360 on the best tester, so I figured I should fix that up. And so I did. So there's that. Let's see. Since it's probably right around that kind of size, it's actually quite a bit longer than the K-Bar Folding Hunter, the Dozier guy here. Even though the handle's right around the same. And sure, why not the Kalashnikov 74? Yeah. Alright, so we got some blade comparisons and stuff out of the way. That's great. So yes, like I said earlier, the two nitpicks that I really would say I would love to have seen kind of addressed just a little bit, and they are just nitpicks or personal things. Is not necessarily a fan of the exposed liners around the whole sides there. That's not exactly my jam. And since they were already using micarta and it was cheap enough, I kind of wish that they'd use their denim micarta instead, just because this stuff really feels nice. But other than that, this thing works out quite nicely. Some people probably think that a clip point like this looks a little bit more aggressive than a drop point. Something like this with a little bit more of a kind of a thing there. And yeah, I could definitely see that, for somebody pointing a knife at somebody else, then yeah, it probably looks just a little bit more vicious. But in all actuality, it doesn't really add too much to it as far as aggressiveness goes. I mean, both of them you can stab really well. This one probably can penetrate just a little tiny bit farther due to less friction at the tip, but they're both really well used for everyday carry. I mean, the Buck 110's been used since, or pattern is a clip point, and that's been used since the 60s, I believe. Yeah, I think somewhere in the 60s was when the Buck 110 was out there. And yeah, it works out great. Works out great here as well. We have decent geometry. It's not, ridiculously thin and slicey. This is done for a little bit more EDC tasks sort of thing. So just, it is definitely up for the challenge of, some heavier cuts than maybe just cardboard or something like that. If you need to cut through some, I don't know, vinyl tubing and other things around the house and gardening and all of that good stuff, this will hold up probably just a little bit better for it. But yes, I am quite happy with this guy for the about $33 that I ended up spending on it. QSP really knocking it out of the park with their budget options. Some of them are probably a little better than others. Here's another couple of budget options that I have. This is a Gavile and the Snipe, I believe this guy's called. And they're okay, but they are much more harder use knives. They have thicker blade stock, thicker grinds on them, and stuff like that. This is a much more lightweight, nimble, sort of everyday task sort of thing. And it works out really good for that. So, yes, if you are kind of looking and or I may have swayed you into thinking about purchasing a QSP Parrot, but you thought, this thing's just kind of small. Yeah, you can definitely do much worse than taking a look at the Mamba V2 here. It's a fantastic little blade. So, all right. Let's see. I should probably, at this point, go ahead and open them up so we can take a look on the inside of them. But for anybody else who's not particularly interested in that, I appreciate y'all for stopping by. But yeah, the rest of us are going to go ahead and pull off some of these screws. It's T6 for most of the hardware here. Unfortunately, that's still industry standard. And the pocket clip does have to be removed. And as you can see, that that first one there goes into the barrel spacer. That's why it's quite a bit longer. Here's the other barrel spacer. There we are. And the pivot. All right. Yep. We just got solid micarta. No problems there. Didn't really have too much in the way of a ragged edge or anything like that. Looks like I have just a little tiny bit there on that transition on the lock bar side. That's fine. That'll end up being knocked off with time. But yeah, we got the nice polished liners here with a couple of pockets in there. Ceramic detent ball. And no racers or anything like that. It's just the groove there in the liner. And yeah, we can see we got here little tiny ceramic bearings in the brass cages there. Does look just a little bit dirty on the inside. That's okay. That's basically my fault for enjoying my knives and using them. But yes, so this thing does have quite the small pivot on there. So that's something to definitely keep in mind if you are trying to do any kind of maintenance, or you might want to replace those or something like that. Definitely going to want to measure them, because it's probably not going to match up with a lot of other things out there. That's okay. That's a very niche kind of thing for people doing modification and doing stuff like that. Especially if you're going to like buy something like skiff bearings or something like that for a knife that's like $30. To me, that doesn't really seem worth it, but hey, if this is your absolute favorite model of all time, who am I to judge? I also wouldn't mind if they had a D-shaped pivot going on there, just to make dealing with taking the pivot out for maintenance and all that stuff. Maybe just make it a little bit easier. But all that being said, I haven't had any single problems trying to disassemble this guy either. So I guess it's working out pretty well. This thing does come with some generic thread locker, medium strength, not anything permanent, so you don't have to worry about that. As you can see on the pocket clip screws there, yeah, it's a little bit blue. On the pivot, it's white or clear, something like that, which, hey, I've definitely seen that much more in factory applications, and it's not like the thread locking material is inherently red or blue or anything like that. It's just stuff that they do afterwards. Okay, it would probably help if I just adjust the pivot a little bit. Doesn't take much, and yeah, back to nice action for it. Yeah, really, really good knife for the price. I would say if you are interested, try and seek one out, because it's pretty much in that impulse buy kind of territory for a lot of us, even at the budget end. So, all right, that's everything I wanted to talk about the QSP Mamba V2. As always, I appreciate y'all for watching. Have yourself a wonderful rest of your day, yo.